This session is now being recorded. John, take it away.
Great, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a great day, and I really appreciate you joining us for this ASTHOConnects Need to Know Information for ASTHO Hill Day 2019 call. Whether you are a state health official or if you are a federal liaison person who helps your state health official with everything all federal, we want to welcome you to this call, and we're really pleased that you're taking time out of your day to prepare us for our meetings on the Hill in less than 2 weeks. So I really appreciate that. Today's call really is to help everybody feel comfortable when they get to DC, and to make sure that you have all the preparation you need in advance for getting to DC so that you can feel comfortable. So in the next hour, we're going to accomplish the review of the importance of connecting with members of Congress, both at home and in Washington, D.C. We're going to discuss how to prepare for a meeting with a member of Congress, go over in detail the logistics, tips, and tricks for getting around Capitol Hill, explain the best practices for following up and maintaining a relationship with your federal delegation, and we will also have time for that all-important question and answers, the things that are on your mind that you really need to know about before you get there. So we'll be having time with that. Today we have two amazing individuals who are with us, who are ASTHO staff, and I can see them smiling right now. And they are going to be our speakers for today and lead us through this call. The first is Carolyn Mullen. Wave, Carolyn. Can you wave? There you are. Chief of Government Affairs and Public Relations. And then Carolyn McCoy. Can you wave? Yay, very good, who is our Senior Director of Government Relations. These two folks are amazing, and they lead amazing work and work incredibly hard for us. So it's really a pleasure for me to turn over this conference call to them. So over to you all in DC.
Thank you so much, Dr. Weisman. As Dr. Weisman stated, I'm Carolyn Mullen, and she's Carolyn McCoy, and we're part of the Carolyn's Federal Government Affairs team here at ASTHO. But there are other individuals who work on your behalf every day here in Washington, D.C. with Congress and the administration. Mark Miodowski, who's a principal and director at Cornerstone Government Affairs, and Lucy, who also is on his team at Cornerstone, and Emma Lang, who's a new member of our team, who's our coordinator for government affairs and public relations. And we all work collaboratively to help make the ASTHO Hill Day a success. So one of the reasons why we host the annual ASTHO Washington Week, and in particular the Hill Day, is because it is one of the most influential ways to impact a member of Congress's decision, and it's driven by data. This evidence was created by the Congressional Management Foundation, and they found when they interviewed congressional staff and their member of Congress, particularly if your member or senator has not already arrived at a firm decision on an issue, how much influence might the following advocacy strategies direct the Washington office have on his or her decision. And they found that in-person visits from constituents are in fact the most impactful way to influence a member of Congress. So to walk through our Washington Week, as you know, is part of a broader event, but this ASTHOConnects webinar is focused on the Hill Day activities specifically. So first and foremost, we will be having a joint ASTHO and NACCHO dinner on Tuesday, March 12th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. We will be joined by Mark Garuzzi, who works at the White House Office of Management and Budget. And also the ASTHO and NACCHO team will be going over tools and information to help you make your Hill visits a success. We will also be giving you your packets, your leave behind packets, and your individualized meeting schedules at this dinner, so you have the evening to prepare for those visits. We are printing and putting together those materials for you. The following morning, we will be having breakfast with members of Congress and their staff. We have a couple of members of Congress already confirmed to attend, including Senator Whitehouse from Rhode Island, Sheila Jackson Lee, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz from Florida, and that's in 325 of the Russell Senate Office Building. We encourage you just to stop by, grab some coffee. It's supposed to be very informal, and we're hopeful that members of Congress and their staff will stop by. And then from 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., ASTHO members and HO members will be meeting with their members of Congress. As many of you did, you filled out a registration form when you registered for the Washington Week, and on that form you indicated whether you would like ASTHO staff and our consultants to schedule meetings with members of Congress on your behalf. So far we will be scheduling meetings for California, Delaware, Guam, Idaho, Kentucky, North Dakota, the Northern Marianas Islands, South Carolina and Vermont, and Mississippi. That was the last addition that didn't make the slide. If you're not on this list, it's our understanding your staff will be scheduling meetings for you, so please work with them. Or if there's a mistake, let us know ASAP so we can start scheduling those meetings for you. After the bulk of time for meetings with members of Congress, you'll then go to HHS, where we anticipate meeting with some federal officials. Those meetings have not yet been confirmed, but we're working diligently on hopefully confirming them soon because we are 2 weeks away. And next slide. So the current environment here in Washington, D.C., as you all know, we experienced the longest partial federal government shutdown in recent history. Congress has approved appropriation bills for the remainder of FY19, so the threat of the shutdown is no longer. But it did take a lot of air out of the room with this shutdown. So I think there was a lot of energy and enthusiasm. And what we found in our recent meetings with members of Congress and their staff is actually they're pretty tired and worn out from what they experienced during that partial government shutdown. So things are a little bit delayed on the appropriations front. Carolyn and I have done about 20 meetings so far with members of Congress and their staff, and staff seem pretty exhausted. So I think bringing high energy to these meetings and really being enthusiastic will help bolster some of the morale on Capitol Hill. What we're facing for FY20 is sequestration. Sequestration is a cut in the overall amount of funding available for non-defense discretionary spending and defense discretionary spending. It's current law that these programs funding are slated for a $55 billion cut to non-defense and a $71 billion cut to defense. This translates into about an approximate 10% cut to programs. One of our top asks this year of Congress will be to raise the caps or increase the funding available for non-defense discretionary spending. If they do not achieve a budget deal, there will be cuts. So we will be encouraging them to address it. And then from there, we're going to go into our more specific asks. One of our top priorities for ASTHO for our Hill Day is really driven by our annual legislative agenda, which is approved by our Government Relations Committee and then approved by our board. In terms of our priorities this year, we will be encouraging state health officials to talk about the CDC 22 by 22 campaign, the Public Health Emergency Preparedness Cooperative Agreement Program, the Hospital Preparedness Program, the Preventive Health and Health Services Block Grant, and other programs featured in the FY20 Governmental Public Health Appropriations Book. We're going to walk through each one of these in detail for you. The 22 by 22 campaign really is focused on growing that top line funding level for CDC by 1.5 billion years by FY22. Why 22%? We really felt like $500 million per year for the next 3 years was a reasonable request given the current budget environment that we're in. We currently have over 80 organizations, national organizations, who have endorsed the 22 by 22 campaign, and it's really that umbrella ask, and we will be providing you with a leave behind document to talk to members of Congress about it. I'm going to turn over to Carolyn McCoy for the next task.
Hi, everyone. So again, what we are going to be providing you in your Leave Behind folder, we're going to have a folder personally for you to have your schedule, and then we will have a folder that you can hand to each person that you meet with in your federal delegation. So you'll have materials to leave behind in the office, hence the Leave Behind documents. First, one of our priorities after the 22 by 22 campaign is delving into a little bit more detail into the CDC budget, and it's the Public Health Emergency Preparedness, or the FEHB Cooperative Agreement. So the current enacted level for this program is $675 million. We're going to request $824 million for this program. This is about a 22% increase, which is a wonderful alignment with our campaign. For FY20, it's a 22% increase from the current funding level. This funding, as you all know, is critical for your public health emergency preparedness programs, for not only preparedness, but also response activities. Many of you all are being currently stretched and using those program dollars in everyday activities and in outbreak response and recovery from weather events. So please be prepared to, first of all, look up how much goes to your state directly from this program. It's quite a lot of money. It makes a huge impact on your budgets, and people on the Hill really like to see that. And then also bring your stories of how these dollars are used and recent experiences. I've been looking up a lot of really, really amazing stories from your states to bring up to the Hill. So those go a long way. So again, I've just provided a little bit of information about where the program has been over the last years. It definitely has not been keeping up with the need and the current threat level and all the requirements the program has for states and territories. So that's the FEHB program. And again, we'll have a detailed sheet for you to bring along. Next is the Hospital Preparedness Program, and this comes from the Assistant Secretary of Preparedness and Response in HHS. As you all know, currently it's at $265 million, and we're requesting $474 million. This is, again, to get it back into alignment with current demands on the program, the evolving needs of the program. I always say 21st century threats and not in a 20th century funding level, and then actually some even 19th century threats that are coming back that you all are responding to and using those dollars in more ways than ever. So again, bring the dollar amounts that go to your states and territories and the stories where these programs work together to strengthen the state and local responses and preparedness activities where you work. And finally, we're emphasizing the Preventive Health and Health Services Block Grant. As you know, the current level is $160 million. We're requesting about a 6% increase to $170 million. And I don't have to tell you all the critical need for these dollars and the flexibility that they allow for states and territories to create pilot programs, to move things flexibly, to fill gaps that arise that are not already appropriated for, and again, to just try and meet the needs of the core public health programs in your states and territories. So I provided some details there about the program, and I thought what was most striking was that its peak was at $194 million, and it's dropped by almost 18%, including adjustments for inflation. So clearly this program could use a lot of adjustment to keep up with current inflation and help you all keep meeting the needs and providing those important programs to the populations you serve. So as I mentioned, we will be leaving you a folder. Emma is working diligently to create these Leave Behind folders for you. I'll have these one-page fact sheets for you. We have a beautiful 22 by 22 fact sheet, and Emma is also working very diligently, reaching out to your offices to provide tailored one-pagers, a front and a back for the state and territorial federal funding snapshot fact sheet, we're calling it. And we provide a lot of story and information data on that as an opener, with also some concrete data about where the federal funding goes in your state and how budget cuts could potentially affect the programs in your state. So when we give those to you the Tuesday night before Hill Day, first of all, don't lose them. Second of all, go through them and take close care to review what's in your folder.
Also, another important point about these materials is we're going to make them available to you on Monday, March 4th. We'll be sending a follow-up email. So you'll have access to these documents prior to coming down for Washington Week. The Governmental Public Health Appropriation Book includes our asks from our affiliate organizations. So it goes into greater detail about chronic disease, immunizations, HIV/AIDS, data, informatics, et cetera, et cetera. So if you want to talk about more specifically in granularity on those specific programs, this whole book has all of our affiliate appropriations fact sheets in it, and it's easily, you can reference those areas very easily in this book. But again, we'll make these available to you on March 4th.
Thank you, Carolyn. Very important information. Continuing on with the Hill Day materials, we're also going to make sure you have maps to help you get your orientation. We'll also walk through this with you when you're here on site, but just, you'll have it on hand with addresses and where you should be going, a personalized schedule for those who are having their meetings scheduled with us, a meeting schedule for your meetings with the HHS leadership, suggested talking points, social media, so you can share your successes and your visits throughout the day. We would love to keep spreading the word and showing the members of Congress how much we appreciate their time and their work. And then the final piece is an evaluation follow-up sheet. And Carolyn and I really appreciate when you all take the time to fill these out with what you've heard, interesting points, where we can follow up with the members' offices. If something didn't go well, where we could, meet with them and clarify issues. Just a great place for us to keep the conversation going in addition to your work, keeping the conversation going. So just a little bit of logistics here. You'll want to take note of where your meetings are, either on the House or the Senate side. And you'll see the House, there's 3 buildings that are on that south side of the Capitol building. And then there's 3, the arrow is over one of those, or no, there's 2, sorry. There's 3 Senate buildings there, the Hart, Dirksen, and Russell buildings. So you'll want to make sure that you take notice, because that is quite a bit of a walk there. It could be about 10 or 15 minutes between the House side and the Senate side. So definitely allow yourself some time between meetings if you need to get between those. Once you're on one of the sides, however, if you're on the House side for House meetings, please don't leave the buildings. Go through the tunnels in the bottom, and we can go through more details on that, but you'll save yourself the security lines and the hassle of going in and out of the buildings. And it's actually kind of fun to navigate through the basements. I always pinch myself when I'm like crawling through these basements, getting to the next building. So both the House and the Senate have these tunnels to go between. Again, though, you cannot cross from the House to the Senate without going through the Capitol, and that's not allowed anymore.
Also, make sure you wear comfortable shoes, because you could average a couple of miles in your Hill Day. I think I've averaged 5 miles before.
Wear your Fitbit, too. Treat us your steps. So just a little bit about security. It's not your typical airport security, but they really are, they are scrutinious of pointy things. Leave your knitting needles at home. You don't have to take off your shoes, but definitely allow time to get through security, because if there's hearings or if it's just a busy day, like we will be in the middle of appropriation season, a lot of folks will be lining up at the same time in the morning. So please keep in mind and be sure and just be aware of the entrance you're going in. Some entrances are only for staff members at certain hours, and some allow visitors at all hours. My philosophy and what I always tell myself and tourists all around DC is just ask, 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 ask. Just never be afraid to ask anybody questions where you're going. The Capitol Police are incredibly helpful.
And also, we'll be on site. If you have meetings or need help getting from point A to point B, Carolyn and I will be around on the Hill, so we're happy to meet you and walk you to where you need to go, because we've been in and out of those tunnels a lot. So in terms of meeting with a member of Congress, my rule of thumb is you should go in and expect a 15 to 30-minute meeting and no more than that. Mostly because members of Congress are incredibly busy with their day-to-day schedule. You also have to expect not a traditional meeting location. So you might be meeting with your member of Congress or their staff in the hallway or in the cafeteria or walking from point A to point B, West Wing style. So just be prepared and be flexible. It's very unpredictable. It's going to be a very busy time. They are in session that week. So have your talking points down and know what you want to specifically ask them for. Don't get too caught up in talking about the baseball or football game from the previous night. I think that chatter is good, but you want to make sure, especially if you're dealing with a member of Congress, that you get your requests in before they have to go off to a vote. One of the famous stories I like to talk about is there was a CEO from a company that I was taking to meet with Senator Specter, and we went on the underground train and we went outside the chamber where he was voting. He came off the floor from a vote to go talk to the CEO, and they spent their whole time talking about the baseball game from the night before. And the senator said, okay, this was great. I'll talk to you later. And he left. And the CEO looked at me aghast, like, oh my gosh, I didn't get to talk to him about what I wanted to talk to him about. And yeah, and I shook my head and said, yeah, you missed your opportunity, but I'm happy to talk to you. So just make sure you're on point. Oftentimes, a member of Congress may not be able to meet with you, but congressional staff really are their surrogates. So just be kind. A lot of them are very young and junior in their career, but very committed to learning more about what's happening in the state. They're very passionate about it. They may seem frazzled, so just be patient with them. Sometimes I like to start the conversation by, do you know what public health is, or have you had experience working with CDC before? And if they say no, I said, okay, let me start from the beginning and sort of the public health continuum, the role of public health and what it plays in protecting and promoting the health of population in your state. Always be truthful. If you don't know the answer to something, just say, I don't know, and I'd be happy to get back to you. We really want to emphasize to be a resource to these congressional staff and members of Congress. And don't forget to leave behind your materials. This time of year, I would average 8 to 9 meetings per day, and so I would reference leave behind materials at the end of the day and pull out what I needed my boss to see, and then I usually threw away a lot of the stuff that I didn't think was valuable or useful. But you do want to leave behind those documents so you remind staff of what you talked about in those meetings, because it can be a very long, intense appropriation season for them. So we just want to make sure that when you're on Capitol Hill, to keep the conversation going. If you are on Twitter, tweet, take photos. We'll have a hashtag and social media guide for you. We're collaborating with NACCHO on that. Make sure you send a follow-up thank you note via email when you get back to your state. Just thank them for their time. I saved all of my thank you notes, and the senator saved his thank you notes as well. So the next year when people ask for money, we sometimes would look back and see who thanked us. Other things that we should keep in mind is just to continue the relationship after you leave the Hill. Invite the member of Congress to tour your health department, be a resource to them, and just continuing the relationship. A Hill event is just a one-day experience, but you need to build that relationship over time. I found in my experience it takes about 3 years to build a relationship with congressional staff and a member. So in about 3 months, 4 months, you're going to want to follow up, or if you're writing an op-ed in the Hill, you're going to want to send that out to them. You just want to make sure you're continuing that open line of communication with the member of Congress and their staff. And I think we just talked about that. So next slide.
Just at home, continuing with when they're at home.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then here's just contact information. But again, we'll leave this in your packets for you. But the day of, these are our cell phones. If you need anything, we'll be on site. We'll be around all week. Or you could just call us, tomorrow if you have more questions. We like to provide concierge service for the Hill Day. We know it can be a very stressful event, but also fun at the same time. And we want to make this as easy as possible for our members.
Oh,
Great.
Yes, one more. There we go.
As with all of our products, after this webinar, please feel free to fill out the evaluation form. And we also want to make sure we leave enough time for any questions or that we can address.
So Dr. Weisman, we'll turn it back over to you to quarterback the question and answer.
Great. Carolyn and Carolyn, thanks so much for that great overview of the Hill Day and giving us the tips from the pros. Really do appreciate it. I just want to reinforce the information they said about sharing stories from your local communities with the dollars that you have received, why they're important. Some of us also put together sheets of those stories that we hand them and by legislative district so people can see what's really happening in their own communities. So those are really helpful, and I wanted to reiterate that. Wanted to reiterate the concierge service of ASTHO. They are here to help make your visits as painless as they can, and they do an amazing job. I wanted to also encourage you to make sure you bring your business cards. Bring your business cards, and you should bring your business cards with a cell phone number. You want members of Congress and their staff to have your cell phone number because you want to be seen as the trusted source in your state for all information public health. And I have found that as you build these relationships, they call you and they will just like literally, Senator Murray just calls John Weisman and has a question. And that's the way you want to be seen. And you don't need to always know the answer when they call, but you need to commit to getting them what they need. So please bring your business cards with your cell phone and make yourself accessible to these, incredibly important policymakers. So I know that many of you probably have tips to share as well. And just in a second here, we're going to go to your questions. But I thought I'd take the moderator's prerogative, Carolyn, and ask you a question that I think often comes up. We're going to be going in and asking for funding. This is appropriations time and what we want to see, and we're asking for more money. So what's the best way to handle a question when a member of Congress or a staffer asks us for suggestions on programs to cut in lieu of the priorities we are discussing? How do you really handle that one?
Great question, and it has happened to me before. The answer to that is I'm an advocate for all of public health, and all these programs, when they come to the state, are vitally important to protect and promote the health of the population. So I am not going to discuss what programs to cut today. I'm talking to you about the needs of the community in your state. So I'm going to defer to you in terms of making those decisions. But that's why we need to raise the cap so we have more money available for non-defense discretionary spending. So that's how I would answer it. We definitely don't want to get into the practice of proposing cuts to programs and increasing others. We don't want to supplement funding. We really want to make sure that we're growing the broader pot of resources available, especially for the states, because all that money comes to the public health department, and all those funding streams are vitally important.
Great, thanks for that. Now, I will admit, I don't quite know how we're taking questions. So there's somebody there. I don't know if people's phones.
So good question, Dr. Weisman. Press *6 to unmute yourself if you have a question, and once you're finished, put yourself back on to mute with *6. And then we also have Emma sitting here. If you are unable to unmute for some reason, you can chat it in through the Zoom interface. So *6 to unmute. Thanks, Dr. Weisman.
So don't be shy out there.
And it doesn't seem like there's any through the chat box yet. We'll give a minute or two more for.
Could just be we covered all of it.
I think we did great.
Well, while we're waiting for a question, let me just throw another one out there. So, what's the best way to handle a question that might get us in hot water back home, that you're being put on the seat about a policy issue or whatever? Thoughts about how to handle those sort of delicate questions?
Sure. So are you, I mean, I think it's easier if we have a specific. So let's say a member of Congress asks for your position on climate change or reproductive health or gun violence prevention. You could say, I don't believe that ASTHO has a consensus policy statement on that. I'll have to check and get back to you since I am here representing ASTHO. But you could say, me personally, speaking as a state health official from Washington, my governor believes X. So I think that that's probably a good way to handle some things that could get you into hot water, per se. And you could also say, or if you don't want to answer the question, you say, you know what, I'll have to check with our government relations professionals back at ASTHO who can get back to you with a response to that. I'm not sure of the position of the organization. And then you can always defer to us.
Yeah, and I think that's also a great plug to keep in mind your little response sheet. If you need us to follow up with something, jot it down on that response sheet and who asked you the question, and we can figure out their email address or whatever, but capture that information for us. And there's also no shame in letting somebody know you'll get back to them, because obviously there's so many different twists and turns with your own state level politics. Emma, did we have any questions on the, questions?
Yeah, quick question here. Just the line between lobbying versus advocacy and educating legislators.
Right. So great question. Is that you, Michael? The question about lobbying. So lobbying is when you're asking for a specific provision in a specific bill, and the bill must be named. So it has to be HR 123. Right now, there's no bills, because they haven't been introduced yet. So we're in the advocacy space. So we can advocate for more resources for public health, and these are our recommendations in the FY20 appropriations bill. We're not crossing any lobbying lines because there's no bill introduced yet. If you're uncomfortable with asking for a dollar amount, and if that's not what your governor has approved, you can always say, I'm here to educate broadly about the importance of federal funding in my state. Here's the kinds of programs it funds. ASTHO can follow up with you with these specific funding requests. Here's their materials, and their government affairs team will meet with you. So you're not crossing any lobbying lines. You're definitely advocating. If you're uncomfortable with advocating, you can just educate and talk about what these funds do, and then we can follow up and do some more targeted advocacy and lobbying.
So again, *6 to unmute, identify yourself, and ask your question. All right.
So we'll let you have some time back in your afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, Carolyn Mullen and Carolyn McCoy. You guys are great.
Thank you all, and we will be sending out the evaluation link shortly after this, so we would love your feedback, and please fill that out. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you in 2 weeks.